Bolivia's former interim president Jeanine Añez has been arrested over the 2019 coup. Tunisia launches its COVID-19 vaccination campaign a month later than planned. Hundreds of Iraqis attended to funerals of 8 people killed by the Islamic State. Hello and welcome to teleSUR. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. Bolivia's former interim president Jeanine Añez has been arrested over the 2019 coup in which she replaced former President Evo Morales. The conservative politician had faced an arrest warrant on charges of terrorism, sedition, and conspiracy in connection with the 2019 November coup against Morales. Ahead of Añez, Bolivian authorities already arrested former Energy Minister Rodrigo Guzmán and former Justice Minister Álvaro Coimbra on Friday. Meanwhile, the former head of the Armed Forces, Fabio Arce, was apprehended on Wednesday, while the ex-police chief, Vladimir Calderón, still faces an arrest warrant among various other officials. The bodies of 16 Guatemalan migrants who were murdered in Mexico in January have arrived in Guatemala. The government declared 3 days of mourning, while the National Council for the Assistance of Migrants handled the transfer of the bodies to their home communities. On January 22nd, Mexican authorities documented the discovery of about 20 burned bodies inside a truck near the Rio Grande borderline. The families of the victims from San Marcos, a border city with Mexico, were the first to be notified after having alerted that they had lost contact with their relatives on January 21st. Colombia's Lake Suezca has dried due to a drought, showing the harsh realities of climate change. This is the second time in a decade that Lake Suezca has completely dried up, leaving local residents fearing the worst. In 2006, the lake was declared a biodiversity reserve as part of a campaign to preserve it and in the face of climate change. Authorities then committed to an environmental plan to stop the planting of grass for cattle in the area and the extraction of water with motor pumps. In Peru, voters remain divided as general elections scheduled for April 11 are nearing. Opinion polls show presidential candidate and former Congress member for the Popular Action Party, Johnny Lescano, is leading with 13% of voters' support. He is followed by 3 right-wing candidates, tied with 7% each. But according to opinion polls, as much as 21% of voters remain undecided regarding the 18 candidates, while 16% say they plan to vote abstain. A runoff election will be held if no candidate secures more than 50% of the vote. A Peruvian prosecutor on Thursday charged presidential candidate Keiko Fujimori with money laundering following a 2-year investigation. Fujimori is accused of receiving illegal campaign funds from Brazilian construction company Odebrecht to finance her 2011 and 2016 presidential campaigns. After 28 months of investigation, prosecutor Jose Perez formalized his accusation against Keiko and 40 others, including her husband, for organized crime, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. She was detained from October 2018 to November 2019 for the same corruption case. Ecuador's National Electoral Council has set a limit for campaign spending for the 2 presidential candidates who will go into a runoff on April 11. The limit established for electoral campaigning will be just over $1.2 million, split between both candidates, left-wing Andrés Arauz and right-wing former banker Guillermo Lasso. The Electoral Council explained that the limit on the amount of money that can be spent on campaign events such as rallies is over $2.9 million, corresponding to 40% of the amount set for the first round. According to the electoral schedule, the campaign will begin on March 16 and end on April 8. Wildfires in Argentina have left at least 1 person dead and 11 missing, according to authorities. The fires that hit the Patagonia region have led to dozens of people having to be evacuated, while initial reports said over 200 homes have been destroyed. On Friday, firefighters finished extinguishing the flames in the Indian region, located almost 2,000 kilometers of the capital, Buenos Aires. During the rescue operations, the remains of a rural worker who had been missing since Tuesday were discovered. The governor of Chubut province has stated that the fire was intentionally started. The Argentinian government has reduced flights from Brazil, Mexico, the United States, Europe, and other countries to prevent a second wave of COVID-19 due to the British and Brazilian strains of the virus. President Alberto Fernandez announced that the measures will continue to be evaluated according to the health situation in the country. International flight frequencies are to be reduced by 20% from Brazil, Mexico, and Europe, 10% from the United States, and 30% from Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Panama. People will also be asked not to travel to countries where the UK strain is present. Controls on travelers arriving from other countries will also be conducted, including PCR tests and mandatory isolation period of 14 days from arrival. Still in Argentina, social organizations are undertaking a global day of action on Twitter to demand the release of social leader Milagro Sala. The global action comes 5 years after Sala's arrest. Through their messages, activists intend to draw attention to the unfair circumstances in which the social leader was arrested in 2016. They demand an end to the political persecution against her. Sala is serving a 13-year prison sentence for the alleged misappropriation of public funds for the construction of housing facilities by social organizations. Brazil's federal health regulator has approved the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine for widespread use, as well as the antiviral medication Remdesivir, to the first drug for patients hospitalized with the virus. This after the country reported a new single-day record of COVID-19 deaths.
The benefits outweigh the risks, and the data support the registration of the product AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine. We don't currently see any risk to the population's health related to the use of this vaccine, and therefore our recommendation is to proceed with registration.
The second stage of the Soberana COVID-19 vaccine clinical trials continues. As announced by the provincial government of Havana on Twitter, the inoculation started on March 10th in 30 clinical sites of the capital, and the intention is to administer shots to 44,000 people during this phase. As the authorities revealed on Friday, the trial vaccination will continue in 48 healthcare centers. While likewise, the Cuban Biotechnology and Pharmaceutical Industries Group, BioCuba Pharma, announced on Thursday that the entire Cuban population will be immunized against COVID-19 before the end of 2021, based on the proven efficiency of its vaccine candidates Soberana 01 and Abdala. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
Who's moving the chess man? What interests and motivate the actors behind each event? What's at stake? Critical Moves investigates every event from Monday to Friday, only on teleSUR. Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomy. Monday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Tunisia has launched its coronavirus vaccination campaign a month later than planned. The country's healthcare workers will be the first to receive the jab, followed by elderly people and those with underlying health issues. Tunisia received 30,000 doses of the Sputnik V vaccine from Russia and is expecting the shipment of more doses in the coming weeks from China. About 240,000 COVID-19 cases have been recorded in Tunisia since the pandemic started, and 8,300 people have died from the virus.
Bien sûr, si on veut reprendre une vie,
if we want to get back to living a life on the edge of normal, we will have to eradicate this virus, and we cannot do it without vaccination. This is a fact, and it is a reality that should not be denied. So we have to go and get vaccinated if we want to resume our activity, if we want to live normally, because living like this is also stressful.
Vivre comme ça, c'est stressant aussi.
Ethiopia has also started rolling out its vaccination program as the country faces a surge in new cases. Africa's second most populous country last week received 2.2 million doses of the AstraZeneca jab manufactured by the Serum Institute of India and is targeting health workers during the first phase of its vaccine drive. According to the African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, both cases and deaths have risen by 11% on average each week in Ethiopia. The East African country aims to vaccinate 20% of its population by the end of the year. Ethiopia has so far registered 172,571 cases of COVID-19, the fifth highest total in Africa and the highest in East Africa.
On one way, we are happy that we are being vaccinated today. On the other hand, the vaccine which is available in Ethiopia is not enough for the whole community. So our community has to wait for some time. So it means the pandemic is not yet over. We're going to have patients coming to our hospital maybe for the next 6 months or so.
Thousands demonstrated in the Algerian capital Algiers on Friday to reject early legislative elections announced on Wednesday. Protesters linked to the anti-government Iraqis movement defied a coronavirus ban on social gatherings to rally in different parts of the capital. People also took to the streets in other parts of the country. President Abdelmadjid Tebboune said June 12 for the early legislative elections after he dissolved parliament last month. The vote is part of the president's promised political reforms following protests by the Iraqi movement that forced his predecessor to resign in 2019. The Lebanese capital Beirut saw protests this Friday calling for the immediate transitional government. The country is experiencing a severe economic crisis with surging unemployment, while the local currency has plunged to a new low.
Our presence here today as young people is to bring that spirit back to the people, to show people that the revolution is still happening, that spirit is still here. We don't want to migrate. We, the Lebanese youth, are here, and we are staying until our last breath.
Iran and Russia has extended their comprehensive cooperation agreement until March 2026, strengthening their strategic alliance in the face of Western sanctions. The two nations agreed on a 5-year extension to the agreement signed on March 12, 2001. Tehran and Moscow have deepened their cooperation for mutual development. Authorities also rejected the unilateral sanctions imposed by hegemonic powers, as well as the interference of the United States in their internal affairs. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has announced a series of measures which he said it will lift the country's economy, pledging to bring the inflation rate back down to single digits. In an address to business leaders in Istanbul, the president also vowed to reduce public expenses and narrow the current national deficit. Turkey's economy was already suffering when it was hit by the pandemic, with the local currency devaluating to record levels due to concerns.
We will give approximately 850,000 small businesses tax exemptions and leave their obligation to file taxes. Our economic reform package will safely carry Turkey into the future. It includes concrete and solution-oriented policies.
More stories coming up. Stay with us.
Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali analyzes the international media influence driven by the empire, accesses analysis of political, economic, and social life throughout Latin America through our stream and website in English. A critical space committed to truth to determine the conjuncture that moved the world today. The World Today. Mondays on teleSUR.
为了保持身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Guide your body. Tuesdays, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Hundreds of mourners in Iraq have attended the funerals of 8 people killed in attacks claimed by the Islamic State group. The attacks took place on Friday in a village north of the capital. Among the victims were a lawyer, a policeman, and 6 members of the same family, including 2 women. The Iraqi military said it was a revenge attack ordered by a village resident who had been driven out of the village after being accused of being a member of the Islamic State. IS attacks in urban areas have since dramatically dropped, but Iraqi troops have continued to battle sleeper cells in the country's desert areas.
Yesterday, unarmed forces came and raided the houses and killed 6 people, 4 men and 2 women. Then went to their uncle's house. They killed 1 person. They moved to their house and killed the 8th person. In fact, 8 people have been targeted. The motives and reasons are unknown. The people who were targeted are simple people, and they do not have any problems.
Minneapolis City Council has approved a $27 million wrongful death settlement in the civil lawsuit filed by George Floyd's family. This is the largest pre-trial settlement in a civil rights wrongful death case in U.S. history. According to the family's lawyers and results from a federal lawsuit filed in July 2020, former police officer Derek Chauvin is currently on trial facing murder and manslaughter charges for Floyd's death on May 25, 2020, which was captured on video and sparked outrage around the world. 3 other police officers also face charges linked to the killing. And Floyd's family lawyer, Ben Crump, announced the settlement and stated that the family's position on the matter, noting that it represents an advance for social justice.
It is my great honor to announce that George Floyd's family, our legal team, and the city of Minneapolis and its leaders have settled the civil lawsuit in the death of George Floyd. The settlement is not just historic because of the $27 million paid out, but for the impact on social justice, policy reforms, and police reforms.
India will produce more than 1 billion COVID vaccine doses by the end of next year in an initiative launched Friday with the United States, Japan, and Australia. The so-called Quiet Alliance announced that the Indian company Biological and Limited will manufacture at least 1 billion additional vaccine doses by the end of 2022, focusing on the single-shot US-developed Johnson & Johnson jab that was approved Friday by the World Health Organization. India, a global pharmaceutical hub, is already sending vaccines to 70 nations.
Countries have agreed to a plan.
Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz on Friday defended his country's decision to temporarily stop using one batch of the AstraZeneca vaccine.
For me, it is important to say that we never make the decisions for political reasons, but that decisions are made based on the experts. Anytime if there is a suspicion or if there is a death that occurs not long after vaccination, then it has to be very carefully investigated, of course.
The Austrian Chancellor also criticized the vaccine delivery strategy of the European Union.
Deliveries are not made according to population key. There are indications that this practice will intensify in the coming months and that the differences between the member states will become greater and greater. These delivery plans clearly contradict the political goal of the European Union, namely that all member states should receive their share per capita equally.
The World Health Organization said Friday it was assessing reports of blood coagulation disorders faced by some people who were inoculated with a specific batch of the AstraZeneca vaccine distributed in the European Union, while stressing that the shots are safe to use.
They are looking at these particular signals and will meeting soon and will advise WHO on any new safety signals or concerns about any vaccines. And they're currently assessing the reports on AstraZeneca. And as soon as we've got a full understanding of that from our committee, we will communicate that to the public. Vaccination against COVID-19 doesn't reduce deaths from any other causes. Thromboembolic events do happen in the population, so it's not clear whether this is something that was going to happen or whether there was any relationship. That's why it's important to always review any signal like this.
The World Health Organization has announced it had granted an emergency use listing for the coronavirus vaccine made by Johnson & Johnson.
We hope that this new vaccine will help to narrow vaccine inequalities and not deepen them. The COVAX facility has booked 500 million doses of the J&J vaccine, and we look forward to receiving them as soon as possible. An equitable distribution of vaccines remains the biggest threat to ending the pandemic and driving a global recovery. As I said last week, one of the major challenges we need to solve is how to dramatically increase production of vaccines.
In France, more than 200 undocumented asylum seekers gathered on Friday in front of Paris Prefecture to denounce the fact that they were unable to get appointments to file their application for residence permits. The demonstrators carry banners reading "An appointment for all." Elected officials and associations have strongly criticized the obligation to submit digital applications for residence permits. On February 18th, the Administrative Court of Rouen ruled an order that requiring foreigners to complete their applications online was illegal. And we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.